Money wasn't invented to make trade easier. It was invented so rulers could collect taxes. Long before the first coin was struck, long before merchants carried bags of silver, governments were already demanding payment from their people. Not in coins, but in obligations. This hidden origin of money changes the way we understand the entire financial world. Because most of us were taught a very simple story about how money began. First came barter. A farmer traded wheat for tools. A shepherd exchanged wool for pottery. People swapped goods directly because there was no money. But barter had problems. It required what economists call a double coincidence of wants. Both people had to want exactly what the other had. So eventually, societies invented money to make trade easier. It sounds logical. But archaeologists discovered something surprising. The evidence for a widespread barter economy before money is almost non-existent. Instead, the first large human societies ran on obligation, debt, and taxation. To understand why, we have to go back more than 5,000 years to the earliest cities on Earth. In ancient Mesopotamia, humans built the first complex urban societies. Managing these cities required organization on a scale humanity had never attempted. Food had to be collected. Labor had to be coordinated. Temples had to be maintained, and armies had to be supported. All of this required resources. And rulers needed a reliable way to gather those resources from the population. The solution was taxation. But there were no coins yet. Instead, the economy ran on systems of accounting. Scribes sat with wet clay tablets and reed styluses. They pressed symbols into clay that recorded economic obligations. A farmer owed a certain amount of barley to the temple. A shepherd owed livestock. A worker owed labor. Each tablet represented a promise or a debt. And those debts were measured using standardized units. Barley was one, silver weight was another. But most of the time, no silver actually changed hands. It simply existed as a unit of account. Money, in its earliest form, was a record. This allowed entire cities to function without needing physical currency. But something important made the system work: authority. Temples and palaces had the power to enforce obligations. And taxation ensured those obligations mattered. If a ruler demanded payment in barley, people needed barley. If debts were measured in silver, people needed silver units in their accounts. Taxes created demand. That demand gave value to the system. Money did not emerge from trade, but from obligation enforced by institutions. This subtle shift changes how we think about money. Because if money grows out of taxation, then it is deeply tied to political power. As city-states grew into larger kingdoms, rulers faced a new challenge: war. Armies required food, weapons, and compensation. Supplying thousands of soldiers moving across long distances created logistical problems. You could not easily pay an army with sacks of grain. Soldiers needed something portable, something standardized, something universally accepted. This led to one of the most famous innovations in history: coinage. Around the 7th century BCE, in the kingdom of Lydia, rulers began minting standardized metal coins made from electrum. Each coin carried an official stamp that guaranteed its weight. For the first time, money existed as a physical object that could move easily. Coins were not introduced simply to help merchants trade. They spread because governments used them to pay soldiers. Once soldiers received coins, they spent them in nearby towns. Merchants accepted them because they knew they could be used to pay taxes. The state issued coins, soldiers spent them. Merchants accepted them, citizens used them to pay taxes. Money circulated because the government demanded it. The Roman Empire later built one of the largest taxation systems the world had ever seen. Rome controlled territories across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Taxes flowed into Rome from across the empire. Coinage connected this massive system. Roman soldiers were paid in imperial coins, which spread throughout local economies. Merchants accepted Roman currency because they needed it to settle taxes. Again, the same mechanism appeared. Taxes created demand. Money was not simply an economic tool. It was a political technology. It allowed governments to organize resources across vast populations. But ancient societies also discovered something dangerous. Debt could grow. Obligations could accumulate. When too many people lost the ability to repay, social stability collapsed. Farmers lost their land. Families fell into debt bondage. Ancient rulers understood that financial systems could destroy society. That is why many civilizations periodically erased debts. In Mesopotamia, kings issued proclamations that canceled debts. These decrees freed families and returned seized land. These were acts of political survival. If too many citizens lost their freedom, revolts became inevitable. Debt cancellations restored balance. Throughout history, this tension between taxation, debt, and stability appeared again and again. Centuries later, during the rise of modern states, these systems evolved into the structures we recognize today. Paper money replaced many metal coins. Central banks emerged to manage national currencies, yet the core principle did not disappear. Modern currencies still depend on taxation. Citizens must pay taxes in official currency. This requirement guarantees demand. Money works partly because governments require it. Without taxation, the demand for currency would weaken dramatically. Money organizes obligations, it mobilizes resources. It funds armies and builds infrastructure, but it also concentrates power. Money did not simply evolve from markets. It evolved from governance. Taxes came first. Coins came later. The next time you see a coin or a bank account, remember its origins are political. Money works because governments require it. Across thousands of years, from clay tablets to digital ledgers, that relationship has remained remarkably consistent. If money began as a tool of power, how much of today's financial system still operates according to that same logic? When we follow the history of money, we do not simply find trade. We find taxation, authority, and the architecture of power. Money is not just an economic invention. It is a political one. Taxation has always been central to its stability. The relationship between money and power has never disappeared. It has only evolved. Understanding this history changes how we see the present. If you want to explore more hidden systems behind money and power, subscribe to The Dark Economy.